So during my time as a midshipman here at the Naval Academy, the Vietnam era POWs were finishing up their careers, and so they were ordered here to be teachers. And I was lucky enough to have a number of them as leaders, teachers, and mentors. I'm thinking particularly of Paul Galanti, who was my battalion officer, Mike McGrath, who was my leadership instructor when I was a second class, and some others who are memorialized at various places around the Naval Academy grounds. So let me take you to these places and tell you a little bit about their influence on my Navy career and my life. Also buried here is Admiral Dick Naughton, who I knew very well. Admiral Naughton was a Tomcat RIO. I first met him in the mid-90s when I was the aide to Air Land, and my boss, Vice Admiral Tony Less, used to go over to Newport News periodically to check up on the progress of the USS Enterprise in the yards. And Admiral Naughton, then Captain Naughton, was brought aboard specifically to get the ship back on schedule and work with the shipyard to do that, and he was very effective in that role. So that was quite a challenge in terms of the recoring and everything else they had to do to Enterprise. Enterprise was the first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and it had 8 reactors. A Nimitz class, for comparison, only has 2. Quite a challenge, and Admiral Naughton did a great job. Later, he became the superintendent of the Naval Academy, and he arrived right as I was finishing up my tour teaching at the Academy. I was able to play a few rounds of golf with him. And the last time I saw him was in San Francisco when I was the editor of military.com, and I saw him at Fleet Week in 2006. So, great man. And the Naval Aviation legend who was most recently laid to rest here is Senator John McCain. He died on the 25th of August and was laid to rest a few months later in 2018. In fact, they had midshipmen line the road from the chapel all the way over to his final resting place here. And you can see people leave tributes, challenge coins, and different things in salute to Senator McCain. John McCain did it right as a naval aviator. He wasn't, by his own admission, was not that great of a midshipman, didn't really like it here, but found himself as an attack pilot. He was actually aboard the USS FORRESTAL when they had that tragic fire. In fact, if you look at the footage, you can see him jump out of the airplane, jump off the nose, and run across the flight deck. Later, he was shot down on a mission where he sustained massive injuries during the ejection and wound up in a lake. He was a POW for 7 years, and during that time he was offered early release because his father was an admiral who was in charge of the Pacific Fleet, and Senator McCain refused, complying with a POW code of conduct and proving himself a man of great honor. When he came back, he was the CEO of a squadron, and I first saw him when he was a captain and I was a midshipman. I met him years later at an Army-Navy game in Philadelphia when I was teaching at the Naval Academy. I was a commander by this time. And then I was able to interview him a number of times when I was the editor of military.com and other subsequent military websites. My last conversation with him, I took this picture. He was giving remarks on the top of a building very close to the Capitol in DC. We were able to have a great conversation about the good old days flying jets off of aircraft carriers. Another aviation great whose final resting place is here at the Naval Academy Cemetery is Admiral Bill Lawrence. So Admiral Lawrence was the superintendent of the Naval Academy when I was a midshipman, and his wife was also a very special lady, Diane. She was the first lady of the Naval Academy when I was a mid. She passed away in 2020. Here's a statue of Admiral Lawrence in front of Brown Field House, among the buildings that was built after my time as a midshipman. The inscription here is pretty amazing. First to fly Mach 2 in a naval aircraft. As you can see in this, he's memorialized here wearing a space helmet and some other gear that he did when he broke Mach 2. Korean War pilot flying the Banshee Vietnam in the Phantom. He was shot down, POW 67 to 73. As I mentioned, he was the superintendent of the Naval Academy when I was here. Later, Commander, 3rd Fleet, and then the Chief of Naval Personnel. And then over here you can see his awards, medals, quite a list. Legion of Merit, Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star with the Combat V, 2 Purple Hearts, 3 Air Medals. Great man, and this statue of him is a great tribute. So another place on the Academy grounds where Admiral Lawrence is memorialized is here on Hospital Point in the Air Park. This is an F-4B, sort of airplane he was flying when he was shot down. You can see on the canopy rail Commander William Lawrence, and his RIO was Lieutenant J.G. James Bailey. Also, this is a VF-143 Puking Dogs. As I've said before on the show, I was in the Puking Dogs for my 2nd fleet tour, flying the F-14B Tomcat. Admiral Lawrence, when he was a CO, was skipper of the Puking Dogs. When I was teaching at the Naval Academy, I had the great gift to sit down with Admiral Lawrence. His wife used to drop him off in front of Mahan Hall, and there was a seating area that was called the Heart Room that had a coffee bar and so forth. So he'd be sitting there by himself. I'd be walking through on my way to teach an English class, and I'd see him there. So I'd sit down with him and talk aviation, and he really did enjoy that. His health was failing quickly at this time, but he was still able to have a great conversation. So I mentioned that I was a Puking Dog. I said it was one of my favorite squadrons, cool emblem. And to my disappointment, he said, I hated that name. I was trying to get him to change it. So that was kind of a heartbreaker to hear him say that. And here's Admiral Stockdale's final resting place. So there's a great statue of Admiral Stockdale here in front of Luce Hall on the Naval Academy grounds, named for Commodore Stephen B. Luce. This is where my office was when I taught here from 98 to 02. So I knew Admiral Stockdale. I met him first when my dad was a student at the Naval War College, and Admiral Stockdale was the president of the Naval War College. That's before I entered the Naval Academy. And then I would see him periodically during my time as a midshipman, because he'd come here to give speeches or attend lectures or whatever. He was here a number of times during my time at the Naval Academy. And then later, when I was the editor of Approach magazine, I got to actually interview him and have an in-depth conversation about his time as a naval aviator, not just focusing on his time as a POW, but also talking about his time as a fighter pilot, as a test pilot, his entire aviation career. And he was really happy to talk about other facets of his naval aviation career besides just his time as a POW. So remember, when he was shot down, he was the Air Wing commander. So when he got captured and he was taken prisoner, he was the senior ranking officer in the Hanoi Hilton. So he got the worst of it in terms of torture. And he resisted and set the example for all of the other POWs who were held captive there. In fact, in one case, they wanted to have him on a propaganda film. So to make sure this didn't happen, he beat himself up with a wooden stick that he found and made himself so he couldn't be on camera. He received the Medal of Honor for his conduct as a POW. During my interview with him, he told this story that is pretty remarkable. So when he was at test pilot school, one of his classmates was none other than John Glenn, who we've talked about before on the show, who I interviewed when he was a senator. So he and John Glenn were at test pilot school together. So John Glenn invites Admiral Stockdale to do a cross country to get some flight time. And so they take a T-33, which Admiral Stockdale had never flown. John Glenn jumps in the front cockpit. Admiral Stockdale jumps in the rear cockpit. John Glenn was a major. Stockdale was a lieutenant commander at this time. So they fly to Florida, dodge some thunderstorms on the way, get there, spend the night, come back the next day. And as they're manning up the airplane to fly home, John Glenn says to Jim Stockdale, hey, why don't you hop in the front seat? And so Admiral Stockdale's like, I've never flown the airplane. He's like, it'll be all right. Admiral Stockdale's like, sure, okay. So he jumps in the front cockpit. John Glenn is straddling the rear cockpit. Canopy's open, T-33 tandem seating. Sort of in a loud voice, giving the instructions to Admiral Stockdale on how to start the airplane up. And then once the engines are going, he yells at him, okay, I'm going to strap in the back. So he straps in, closes the canopy, and gives him whatever instruction he needed to get airborne and fly home. So that is life in the old days, old Navy. You couldn't get away with that these days. So the thought of Admiral Stockdale and John Glenn flying across country is just an amazing, amazing thought to me. So I'm glad I was able to hear that story from him firsthand. Okay, that's going to do it for this episode. So remember, Punks were on sale for the entire month of May. The Naval Institute Press has reordered copies, and they will be getting them in a number of weeks. They will honor every order received in May, even if the books don't arrive until after May. If you don't have Punks War yet, order it now. $4.99, 20th anniversary celebration of my debut novel. After that, it goes back to 1999, which I still think is a good deal, but if you can get it for $4.99, why not? Also, please support the channel by becoming a patron. We can take the channel to the next level with your help. So please go to www.patreon.com/WardCarroll and give whatever you can in support. Patrons get benefits. We had our first happy hour last night. It was an amazing Zoom call, and we're going to do these on a regular basis. Also, there's the Mooch Report newsletter, swag. I will sign copies of my book and whatever else you want if you're a patron. So please support me by being a patron. So that'll do it for this episode. I look forward to talking to you again soon. If you're a first-time viewer, ring the bell, give me a like. And if you're a repeat viewer, a subscriber, likes matter a lot. So give me the like and comments. Love the comments. This community is the best part about having this channel grow. And share the episodes on the other social networks that you're part of. Again, I appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you again soon.